Hey guys, this is Gaijin Hunter. If you watched my video on my newfound love of the Atelier franchise, you'll know that Ryza Trilogy was the one that I haven't played yet. Well, over 120 hours later, I have now played Ryza 1, 2, and 3, and I love them. And I definitely want to make a video which goes more in depth about them, but for now I just want to start by sort of going over what is the DX in the DX series. Is it worth getting if you somehow picked up Ryza 1 to 3 on sale? And maybe you haven't played them yet, or maybe you did play them and you're just curious if it makes sense to go back and play them now. In this video I'll cover all the new features and also when and how to unlock them. Do note that this new re-release also includes PS5 and Switch 2. In my experience will become playing the Switch 2 versions of the game. Okay, jumping in, we'll start off with Ryza 1, which is a quite more slow burner type of game, so if you do go into this, expect the first 5 hours or so to be pretty slow, but you'll appreciate it in the end. I think the world building is fabulous, and of course all the additions here this time is not just all the various DLC and stuff that you got, but it's very character focused, and I do think that Ryza 1 is the most compelling DX entry out of all of them. Atelier games release and then they usually have a bunch of cosmetic stuff, so costumes and skins for your characters, and then they usually do a season pass where they add in either new episodes that are character focused or new areas to go and gather and collect. And on top of all of that, of course, they have free updates which add in new features, new difficulty modes, and stuff like that. The DX collection is basically everything they've released up to now all in one package for one price. So as such, here's a list of all the stuff that you get that is not exclusive to the DX game, like new content, but is all included. So you'll get all the free updates, which was like the photo mode, there was a score attack Weasel Roast feature, a Pony Companion, the super high difficulty patches, higher level exploration area for gathering materials, a very easy mode if you just want to focus on story, and then a crazy amount of skins, so like 18 weapon skins, additional costumes including the swimsuits, which is kind of a staple for these games, is kind of a fan service thing. 5 additional stories, all being about 1 hour each, which focus on different characters, an additional map, and of course Atelier has this thing called the BGM pack, where they include about 1,000 songs from all their past games, and if you want to, you can change different parts of the game to use some of your favorite tracks. But the DX version itself also has new features. So for this one, there's 3 new playable characters you can unlock to play. 1 new additional episode, which is actually baked into the main story, which is quite new for these DX series. They normally don't do that. But in the case of Ryza 1, it really makes sense with how they did it. They do have a bunch of tuxedo and dress costumes for the DX release, a custom combat mode, which I'll show off, which is basically just being able to tinker with the battle system and try out new things. And of course, additional graphical options and improvements, as well as increased capacity and other quality of life stuff. The DX version also had some pre-order bonuses, which is just 3 different poses and a new photo frame if you got that. If not, don't worry about it. And there is save data bonuses, so if you have save data for any of the 3 original ones, you'll definitely get a more easier start to the game. So you can get upwards of a total of 150 gems, which is great for making and duplicating items, 30,000 coal, which will basically allow you to buy any necessary items early in the game so you can just progress into the sort of meat and potatoes, and then 60 gold coins. The new additional story is found in the main menu under episodes. You'll see all the 5 DLC stories, again about 1 hour each, focusing on each of the characters. And then we get this cute episode with Rami and Agatha, which are the 2 new playable characters that they added. Before we get into the actual characters though, this is kind of weird, but the custom combat I couldn't find for the longest time. It's actually found inside of a treasure box by the hideout. Now you can pick this up as early as the very first time you pass this area. I just found that the treasure box blended in a little too well and I didn't spot it. Once you do open it though, you'll get a tutorial, and basically anytime you go to your bed, you'll be able to start a custom combat mode if you want to tinker around and mess around with stuff, or maybe it makes it a little bit easier for achievement hunting if you're on one of the systems that supports achievements and you just want to pull off like the Fatal Drive final attack for each character. You could do stuff like, toggling on invincibility, stopping enemy movement, and personally I find it just a really great way to tinker with the new characters figure out what they can do, or just try to get used to the battle system, because it does kind of feel a little crazy at first, but once you get used to it, you'll realize the battle system in this game is quite comfy and not rushed at all, actually. Now, there are plenty of comparison videos for the platforms you might be interested online on YouTube, so go ahead and check those out if you want, but the game does have graphical improvements. For the Switch 2 specifically, which I played, I did notice that it has a much higher saturation, higher resolution, it's got some new graphical options, and it runs and looks absolutely gorgeous. Now, to remain consistent across all three titles, because it does get a lot more ambitious as you get later in the series, the Switch 2 version specifically runs in 30 FPS across all three games, but it runs really well. Imagine it's sort of like a quality mode, so you'll get more item density when it comes to like the vegetation and stuff. The resolution is much better, and it runs just really smooth and beautiful. The gameplay for Ryza lends itself really well to 30 FPS. If you want 60 though, the PlayStation, PC, stuff like that, all have those options there, which is great. But yeah, it definitely looks graphically better than playing the original game on the same system. The UX, or user experience type of quality of life, is actually pretty huge for this game. They took a lot of the ideas that they did in the more recent Ryza 3, which released like 2 years ago, and they baked them into the first two games as well. So the basket size, which is how many items you can gather when you're out exploring before you go back to your atelier or your home base, has been increased from 100 to 200, which is more than enough, because it's very easy to just go back and dump everything into your inventory, which is also doubled now. Instead of being 5,000 items, it's 10,000, which means I've never had to worry about selling off items or managing my inventory. I could just collect and duplicate and do whatever I want without even thinking about it. You do get a nice display of how much more capacity you have in your basket as you run around collecting items, because these games are like an ADHD trap and are very fun. You just run around collecting a bunch of materials, then toss them into a pot and craft a variety of different useful items, weapons, armor, and stuff like that. The difficulty option, very hard, which used to be only available once you beat the game, is actually available at the very start, which I found really good because the game is not hard. And I did find myself bopping it up to very hard quite a bit through my playthrough. You can change difficulty at any time without any consequence, and just really fine-tune it to your enjoyment. There is a rumble added, although I will say it was very limited. It was more for like bosses or major sequences, so not really something to write home about. And they did add in a nice option for subtitle size to have them a little bit bigger. Okay, moving on to battle, there are 3 additional characters. The first is Rami, who is one of my favorite characters in Ryza. She's a really funny traveling merchant, and she wields yo-yos. I mean, how can you get any better than that? Obviously, if you clear the side story, they'll be unlocked when you start a game. At the moment that you unlock Claudia, which is your first additional member to your team, if you go back to your atelier, they will unlock. But if not, if you're just going through it normal, she does actually unlock pretty, I would say, early mid-game during the Everyone's Changing quest line. And Rami specializes in physical attacks with fire and ice affinity. She gets some extra knockback to her attacks at a higher tactics level, and her passives seem to focus more on speed and evasion, so she slots in really well in a lot of different team configs. A little bit later, mid-game, you'll unlock a Agatha, who is the second playable character. If you did the side story, again, she'll be unlocked at the same time as Rami, but honestly, mid-game is not bad, so I still found it very good timing-wise for her unlock, which was during the Panicking Boy subquest. Agatha is pretty basic, but I guess that's kind of the allure of this character, is she's just a good old knight defender. So she specializes in physical attacks with mostly wind affinity that causes debuffs at a higher tactics level, and her passive focus more on support and defense. She's a great tank. And then finally they added in the playable character Kilo. She's you just consider her like the OP character. She unlocks in the very last leg of the game during the Abandoned Tower series when you go back to your atelier after that. Interesting enough, she starts at level 30. At this point, your characters are probably more like level 50 or 60. So you'll definitely need to grind a little bit to get her up to the rest of the group. But there are ways that this game makes it very easy to just auto-kill enemies that are lower levels than you, so you can bring her up to speed quite fast. But she is definitely designed to be a late game character. She's a powerhouse, and she specializes in elemental attacks of all 4 types. So she's very easy to pull off order attacks, like if one of your teammates says, hey, deal ice damage, hey, deal bolt damage, she can do it all. And her passive, basically, she's just an all-arounder, so she gets stat boosts for her defense, speed, and attack. The compelling feature of this game for Ryza 1, though, is in the actual main story when you first encounter Kilo, which is at the first part of the endgame, so to say. There is a scenario in which she meets one of the character's boss. I can't believe that this was missing from the original release, because this character relationship is something that pays off later in the series, and is really a motivational force for the boss, this character. So the fact that you didn't get to experience this time of these 2 together, it's kind of crazy to me. So I can see why they went through all the effort to create this and add it into the main game. So I didn't play it without it, obviously, because this is my first time playing the game, but I thought the additional story was great. And then the cute 1-hour story, which takes place technically after the events of the main story, which sort of is a fun adventure with Agatha and Rami, I thought was cute. It's an hour long, it doesn't really spoil too much. However, I do recommend, because they are naturally unlocked pretty early in the game, that you save this episode for post-main game. It's just really nice to see sort of the mindset of where Ryza is in her emotional development, and what really prompts her to do what she does to lead to the events of Ryza 2. Speaking of which, we'll go on to, and these will get progressively easier for me to explain, but my final verdict, so to say, on the DX version for Ryza 1 is that it is the one that benefits the most out of all 3 games. This was kind of obvious because the game came out earlier, but the playable characters are unlocked early enough that they are part of the main game that you can play if you want. The additional story and all the different quality of life is super appreciated for this game, and really it's just wonderful. I'll do a more in-depth review later. This is more just about what's new for the DX version, but as an excuse to just play this game again, especially first-time players or Switch 2 players, if this is on a platform you didn't have before, this is a fantastic purchase, and I highly recommend it. Okay, moving on to Atelier Ryza 2 DX, Lost Legends and the Secret Fairy. I'll just start out by saying I could see why a lot of people consider Ryza 2 the strongest entry in the trilogy. It is fantastic, and the gameplay actually reminds me a lot of Sophie 2, in just that it's filled with character interactions, fun skits, lots of small random events, exploration in dungeons, and stuff like that. It does have the more active time battle, where Sophie was the turn-based one, and the crafting here is much more streamlined than something more like the puzzle-based one of Sophie 2. Anyways, Ryza 2 is it's so good. So like Ryza 1, the DX version will have all the different various free updates, DLC, and cosmetic stuff that they released, where the first game didn't have a lot of playable characters, so they were focused on the character story editions. There's tons of characters and stuff already in Ryza 2, so when they did the DLC and the season pass for it, it focused more on just adding in new areas to explore. As far as what is specifically new for the DX version, there's 2 new playable characters, which we'll cover. There's one side story that was added to the extras menu, which is about an hour long, and unlocks those 2 characters. There's improved functionality of your little companion Fee, which is really great, and we'll cover that. Improved controls for the Spirit Beast, custom combat mode added. Again, the more graphical options and improvements, and basket capacity shown in your field UI. The new side story that they added is just like the first game. You can access it from the main menu. If you just go to episode, you'll be able to play this one. This really doesn't have any spoilers for the main story, so you can play it right after, I'd say, the first dungeon is over. And the Fee functionality is great. So this game does a lot of stuff where you have to explore and find hints within dungeons. Fee being your companion, they will now increase it, so the radius telling you where hidden stuff is much larger. So it makes the exploration point much easier. You've got this treasure chest next to your atelier, which unlocks the custom combat, which I covered in the Ryza 1 section of this video. And then just Fee in general is great, because when you're collecting, you'll notice Fee's little icon here, so you'll get additional items. After you do a battle, you'll notice that Fee will heal your team for a little bit of HP. And it's just overall great quality of life improvements. and I think it's nice that they put it all with Fee, because it gives it sort of a story reason of why things are getting so improved and better, rather than just saying, yeah, we tweaked the system for better exploration. Same deal, if you have Ryza 1, 2, and 3, the originals, you get a bunch of different starting items to help you out your starting game. And if you have Ryza 1 DX, especially if you bought this in a triple bundle, and you're playing them in order, you'll also get the tuxedo dress costumes from that game as well. Graphically, I can only speak to the Switch 2 version, which I played. On the left is the Switch 1 version being played on the Switch 2. But the frame rate and performance was fantastic, 30 FPS locked. 1080p docked, 720 upscaled in handheld, but looked very sharp and ran really well. And they were able to bring back a bunch of the textures, sort of the reduced vegetation and other stuff like that, and sort of make this like the quality mode for Switch 2, which I thought was great. The quality of life improvements on the UX are actually very meaningful because this game, again, is very much focused on exploration and gathering. So they increased your basket size from 200 to 300 when you're out in the field. It now shows on the screen, which is great, so you know how much your inventory is. But the big thing for this game is that you do have a spirit animal that you can ride around on. It has its own sort of gathering points, but now when you go up to a gathering point that Ryza would normally swap between her tools to decide, okay, do I want to use, a sickle and get this item? Do I want to use a bug net and get this item? Because the same spot can produce a variety of different items. You can now just switch your tool while you're riding on your spirit animal and farm for whatever materials you want. It's a really great quality of life for a game in which you're gathering a lot. The 2 new playable characters are added into the game, so let's quick go over them and their kits. The way this works is that the moment that the game allows you to get a first additional character added to your team, in this case it's after the intro part and sort of at the early mid-game, after you completed the first dungeon completely, you're able to craft aqua drops to get Clifford to join your team. And at this point, if you've done the side story, which I recommend you just stop and go and play it because it's only like an hour long, then that will unlock these 2 for play throughout the main game if you want. Ampel, like he is in the other series, because he's a recurring character with Leela, is an alchemist who focuses more on item usage. And a lot of his attacks are magical based and focus more on adding in buffs and debuffs at higher tactic levels. Leela, on the other hand, is the physical warrior. I mean, she focuses on physical attacks of all 4 elements, and her passive focus more on defense, affinity, and evasion. She's really fun to play. And being the DX version, you get the additional costumes, which for me was super important because I actually really hate her design in general, like physically. And I don't like her outfit at all. I find it just jarring and just ugh. So it is nice knowing that you can change, not during this episode, but once you unlock her in the game, you can change her into some of her more elegant dresses, which I thought was great because I just found her design to be distracting. Overall, their side story that they added was fine. I thought, if you like the interactions between Ampel and Leela, like it's always fun to see them talking. The gameplay-wise, though, it wasn't anything really special. It was just a different way to experience the very first dungeon of the game and see what these 2 were up to when they first run into Ryza and her gang at the end. But it's only like an hour long, so it's something that I would say once you do the very first dungeon completely in the game, you could stop, go to the main menu, and play this one. It'd be a great timing to sort of see what they were up to and unlock them for use in the main game. Overall, Ryza 2 has a lot of quality of life in the areas where it really matters. I think the Fee power-ups are incredibly meaningful for the game since there's so much exploration looking for puzzles and hidden stuff, so all the additions really feed into that really well. And just because there's so many characters you can play in this game, I think the sheer amount of costumes that you get from all those DLCs that they had is also a really good value proposition. As an excuse to play it again for first-time players again, or anybody on Switch 2 or a system that you didn't get to play it on, this is an easy recommendation. I think, if you played the original one, but you didn't do all the side content because there's a whole lot of stuff you can do, and you kind of just want to go back and play it again, I think the quality of life upgrades here are substantial enough to really justify double dipping and playing the game again. Now, where Ryza 2, I can definitely feel like it has the roots of what eventually became Sophie 2, which is one of the best entries for new players in my opinion, but is more focused on sort of turn-based and very puzzle-like crafting, where Ryza is more about open-world exploration and more streamlined active time battle. Ryza 3 is kind of like the precursor to Yumiya in a way. It feels very much like an open-world action game. But being the finale, they just crammed so much into this game in terms of content, all the different characters you can play as. Like, if you're looking for a game that you can play for a long time and there's lots of stuff to do, this is a good one for you. This game just came out 2.5 years ago, so you can consider this one for the DX more like just getting all the DLC, the Season Pass, all the costumes, and then, of course, the addition of the new playable characters. That's really the value proposition here. I think a lot of the UI improvements and the quality of life was largely done in this game from the get-go and then applied retroactively to Ryza 1 and 2. As for stuff that is actually new specifically to the DX version, there are 3 new playable characters, 1 side story for the 2 characters, which is about an hour long. They did add in a Wind Beast, which is sort of like an auto-gathering, auto-collect feature. I actually didn't unlock this until after I beat the game, and I'm happy I did because it's crazy powerful, but I like collecting, so I wouldn't have used it anyways. They do have a nice improved minimap display, which I'll show off. It includes the improved controls for the Spirit Beast like they did in Ryza 2, so you can swap your different tools while you're riding around, the custom combat mode, and of course just the standard additional graphic options and improvements. The additional side story, just like the other ones, is accessible from the main menu if you go to episode. Once you play through this, which is not even an hour long, they will be unlockable to play from the very start of the game actually. Of course, as I showed off in the Ryza 2 one using this footage, you do get the improved spirit animal stuff, which is great because it's such a big, large open world that running around on spirit animals is quite fun and convenient. So being able to collect whatever materials you want depending on the tools is a nice addition. Speaking about Spirit Beast, really early in the game when you go to the Karg Isles near the Tree of Light, there's a normal quest on the upper left here. I didn't know this until much later. But you can actually get your second spirit animal here, which is a water-based one, which will allow you to swim across water really fast and even go up waterfalls. Just shows you that, I didn't know about this until I completed the main story. But this game just has a ton of content. Stuff that's not needed, but is certainly fun and interesting and probably unlocks a bunch of other side stuff. So if you're a completionist and you want a game to really sink your teeth into, I think this one has got tons of stuff. The new Wind Beast is unlocked in the second area of the game during the main town here. There's a quest over here on the left of the square. If you go here and talk, then you'll talk about like a mysterious beast which has appeared. Then if you just run back to the plaza and talk to the character for a deeper hint at where to find it, it's actually quite nearby. I'm happy I didn't use him during my main playthrough because he's a little too convenient in my opinion. Again, ADHD trap. I love running around and just smashing everything and collecting everything, and this monster sort of streamlines that process. So go ahead and do this small little battle and you'll unlock this cute little critter, which can be summoned to basically auto-collect anything that's around you for a period of time. Interesting thing about this one is that depending on what item you have equipped, like an axe or a sickle or a hammer, those are the type of items that it'll collect from these spots that are around you. However, it's so OP that if you want to like run around and sort of smash stuff with it, it'll generally get to stuff before you can. And so it's basically an auto gather. Like you really can't enjoy gathering when this thing's out. But if you just want to run through an area and grab a bunch of items that are there just because you want to focus more on crafting, like this thing is awesome for that. I think I tried here to break a crate, but yeah, I think the spirit animal is just too fast, and I couldn't beat it to the punch. Like here, he just teleports over and grabs it. If you're fast enough though, here I get one. Yay. But again, your mileage will vary. If you like this, great. You don't need it though. And just like the other games, there are the pre-order bonuses with the 3 poses and the summer frame, and then the save data bonuses, both if you have the original Ryza 1, 2, and 3. And additionally, if you've got the DX for 1 and 2, you get those dress costumes and tuxedos. On the Switch 2 specifically, definitely the graphics were great compared to playing Ryza 3 from the Switch 1 version on it. Again, just the higher saturation, more stable frame rate. I will say the game was gorgeous, and it's just 2.5 years old, so the DX version, like, there's improvements, but like graphical updates is not really, unless you're on a new system like Switch 2, this is not the selling point. The UX improvements are a little bit less because this game did such a great job at introducing a lot of the quality of life stuff, but again, the limited rumble. You'll notice that like the display for your item basket was actually done from this game, same with the increased sort of size of all the containers, so that's already there by default, so it's not new. But the ability to choose your tools while you're on a spirit animal, enlarge the mini map by holding down the menu button, which is actually really quite convenient for a game that deals so much in exploration, and just some local shadow and other graphical options. So this means that the new characters are actually going to be the main selling point, I think, of the DX version here. There's 3 in total. First one is Clifford. Again, just complete his side story seeking their treasures. It's very short. I found it kind of unsatisfying, but in a good way that you could just do it and then have these 2 new characters playable from the very start. Clifford specializes in AoE physical attacks, which is really nice. It's got a lot of bolt and ice attribute attacks, and his passives seem to focus more on speed and affinity. And Siri, who is unlocked at the same time with Clifford, if you played her in Ryza 2, then you already know it, but she's got a special gimmick, which is the wood element. She's basically a magic user, focusing mostly on air element, and her passives is very much in defense and HP. She's definitely a tank. I don't mean that because she's a tanky character physically, but also just gameplay-wise as well. She's another one where I hate her default costume. I find it kind of weird that she's just running around with her butt hanging out. But she's got some really nice, additional costumes that you can change her into. And then because Ryza DX, while I think the DLC and all those things just as a final product already make it a compelling product, I think just a way to spice it up, they added in Kilo as well. This isn't unlocked until very late game. So she's more basically there for post-content enjoyment, and as a result, she's like really strong. There isn't anything you can do to unlock her earlier. She's meant to be a bonus addition for the end game, but she focuses, again, just like the very first game, in magical attacks of all 4 elements. And she's got some new gimmicks which make her really good for the really high difficulty challenges if you want to do them, because she's really great at boss fights and like stacking debuffs and stuff like that. I'll be honest here, I think the additional story for Sari and Clifford was left a lot to be desired for me. It's mainly more about the character interactions between these 2. The puzzle solving and exploration you do is very surface level. The fact that, they're really compelling battle characters, but they don't even have like a boss that you fight in their story, it was a little bit disappointing. But on the flip side, it means that it's not really spoilery, so you can just do this at the very start. And they are unlockable to play from the very beginning of the game. So I think as battle content, they're compelling additions. So my overall thoughts is Ryza 3 is only 2.5 years old, so the game was already well optimized. The improvements here are mainly about the new characters, so if you like Clifford and Sari, I think this is going to be great. But I don't know whether or not it would be worth purchasing if you already have Ryza 3. Especially if you just bought it recently. Unless you care about going through it again, I think Ryza 3 is already a great game. Of course, if you're on Switch 2 like I am, or if it's your first time playing, like this is a no-brainer. All the DLC was great, and the new additions are fun. So Ryza 3 also gets a big thumbs up for me, but in terms of the DX content, I would say that the first game got the most meaningful stuff, the second one got really great stuff as well, where 3 is certainly welcome. I didn't find myself engaging in it that much to a point that I would, if I was a Ryza 3 owner, I'm not sure that I would have felt the need to upgrade. But yeah, they're selling all 3 games as a trilogy, so it's a great excuse to just get all 3 for a reduced price and play them again. Like this series is peak, man. What more can I say? Highly recommend it if you want a nice cozy game. And I'll also say, which I've said on Twitter as well, that I was a little put off at start because the marketing makes it feel like it's, they're only selling like the physical attraction of Ryza and the other character. It's not like that at all. Like, she's completely wholesome. The games are super chill and cozy. The fan service is just a few shots here or there, like when crawling through small spaces, but for the most part, like it's not that type of game. It's actually a really heartwarming adventure with your friends type of game, so highly recommend. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and until next time, happy crafting.